strategic move that Eddie is making for AJ? Why are you not thinking, let's get him set up for
kind of animal? If that was years and years and years ago. Like, Clarissa is a way different fighter from when she was back in.
Thanks to those joining me live and to those that will be joining me on our
defenses that she's had to have recently. You know, she's pulled people.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable about tribalism. I don't think tribalism is necessarily bad. I just don't think it has to be.
I don't know what he think he sees or what he think he know. But he going to the hospital, bro. Like, bro, you not winning that fight.
You guys mentioned, I think, D-Style, you mentioned him versus Regis Prograis. I'd love, that sounds like a...
Old, I don't need you, you know, and PBC and others, in my opinion, it's like, oh, this is my guy. Like, there's a relationship.
Flat out, it's tough, and we call box, and we go to the end of the round, and then...
That would say, what do you mean by acting black? That's a fair question, but a participant of trash talk knows...
And they're announcing a fight 3-4 months from now. And he ain't going to fight. I bet you anything. He's not going to fight somebody as good as John Wright.
All right. Welcome to another edition of the Roundtable. We've got a great panel as always. From across the pond, we have Bass, the Wonder Kid, in the house. We got the Professor, Chris Andre Boxing. And we also have coming back from a long hiatus, esteemed member of the Boxing Writers Association of America, 2022's Boxing Good Guy Award winner, Lee Groves. And we also have D-Style Boxing. All right, let's get going here.
I'm never winning that award, by the way, ever.
You're totally disqualified from that award. But we had a great fight this weekend. Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis. And Prograis, excuse me. I hate when I call him Prograis. I apologize to Mr. Prograis. This was a phenomenal performance. I think this was above expectations. A lot of people did think Devin Haney was going to win, but I must confess, I did not think it was going to be this dominating. So after this performance, is Devin Haney, or should he be the best guy at 140 right now, the best junior welterweight in the world? Bass, we will start with you. Is he the best junior welterweight in the world? And what do you think happens next for him?
Well, look, if we're doing what have you done for me lately, and you're only as good as your last performance, then maybe he has to be looked at as the best. I mean, the person he faced was no less than the number 2, 3 guy. The only people you possibly would put ahead of him is potentially Tio and then possibly Subriel Matias. And obviously Josh Taylor has the victory over him, but it was a very close fight. So however you look at it, you could possibly say he was the third best at worst. But most people thought he was the number 1 guy after sort of the Tio thing, or at least at worst number 2. So you've got that going against you. It's your first fight at the weight class. So you haven't taken a couple of warm-up gimme fights to get acclimated. You've taken the number 2 or number 1 guy in your first fight moving up. And then not only have you done that, you've basically pitched a shutout masterclass and made him hold a record that I don't think anyone wants to hold. Landing the least amount of punches in a 12-round championship fight. That's not a record that Regis is going to want to have in his career. So with all of that, and then you say, okay, well, Tio put on also a masterful performance against Josh Taylor, but he lost quite a few rounds in that fight, especially in the first half. Haney didn't drop a single round. So if you look at it from that perspective, then you say he has to be the number 1 guy right now. But Tio's got the Ring Magazine belt. And not just that, because obviously there's still work to go, you then maybe say, you got to prove yourself against Tio before you can officially crown yourself as the number 1, or Subriel, or someone who's, you know, a dedicated guy at the weight class. But yeah, based on last performances, like it's hard to top, and it's not really something that if someone said to me, yeah, he's the number one guy, I'm not going to get into a huge debate about it. I'll leave that to Chris because I know he likes to be the contrarian. But yeah, with regards to that, I mean, look, that's how I see in terms of what he does next. I hope he sticks around at 140 for a couple of more fights. I know he won't be here for very long. He's already busting at the seams for 140. But I reckon he'll likely stay at 140 until it's 100% sure that Terence moves up. That's kind of my opinion on that situation. But yeah, I think he'll still be at 140, and more than likely, if it's not going to be Ryan Garcia, I think he might. If he gets an exemption from his mandatory, then maybe he can look at a unification with Tio. But yeah, that's what I think. Or he might do one of those wait when he goes up to 140 to test the waters, get an interim belt up there, and then come back down and campaign for like another 2 fights. But who knows? I mean, he can pretty much do what he wants at the moment. He's got license, but congrats to him. And I haven't really got anything bad to say about it. Would have been perfect if he got the knockout in the 11th, like I predicted, but he just was too disciplined, too cautious to really push the pace. But I feel like he could have got it if he did step on the gas a couple of rounds earlier from like maybe 9th or 10th.
So, D-Style, we're going to do a hypothetical here. We're going to do a World Super Series at 140 pounds. We're going to put Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, Surreal Matias, and we're going to throw Ryan Garcia in there for good measure just to balance it out so we have an even number. Who wins that tournament?
It depends who gets Ryan first. I mean, that's like a easy, breezy. No, but I mean, the guy that fought Matias might be a little bruised after that. I'm just saying, but I'll say this: the only guy, if he comes in his A game, that I believe beats Devin Haney at 140 pounds, is Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo Lopez did a better job handling Lomachenko than Haney did. I don't think Haney won the fight against Loma, in my opinion. But Teofimo, I beat him pretty decisively, in my opinion. That was the footwork. He was able to keep up with the feet. And that's what gave Haney problems, that he couldn't beat Loma all the time with the feet. He was able to do that with Regis. He was able to do that with Jojo. He was able to do that with just about every single one of his opponents, except Loma. And you saw the difference there. Stylistically, I would still favor Teofimo Lopez in a head-to-head matchup. The problem with Teofimo is he's hot and he's cold, right? He could have a bad matchup with somebody we don't really like. He could lose to Combozas. It's random and it just happens that way. Overall, head to head, notwithstanding, I would say that Devin Haney should probably be considered the top guy and I know somebody mentioned that in the chat that Tater beat Regis. Not that my opinion matters or anything, but in my opinion, Regis won that Tater fight. It was very close, and I feel Regis won that fight. So 3 judges decided who won that fight. So it's really a matter of opinion. But I think everybody could agree Regis and Tater were kind of at even level, like regardless of who you think won. And I think at this point of their careers, I think Regis, I just personally felt was a bigger challenge than Tater was, who was coming off that terrible. If you think that the performance of Regis was bad, at least he won. I don't even think Tater won the Catterall fight. And he was already saying he couldn't make the weight. He was going to move up already, and then he ended up staying. But those are my thoughts. I would say Haney's number 1 overall. But just pause, because in a head-to-head matchup, I would still favor Teofimo Lopez.
So, Chris, you're a master of breaking down styles, and I'm just going to throw something at you because D-Style brought up a good point about matching Haney and Tio, and he favors Tio. But when I look back, like at the Sandor Martin fight, and I look at some other Tio's fights where, Nakatani, guys that are kind of long and rangy and don't go deep into that pocket with him or even enter that mid-range area, and they keep him at a distance like Sandor Martin did and Nakatani kind of did to some degree. I think that's where Tio kind of struggles just a tad. I think he's the counter puncher. He likes the guys that go all the way in and kind of mess with him in that mid-range area. Devin Haney can really fight from the outside very, very well. He's really great at gauging distance and keeping you at the end of those long shots. I think Haney would give Tio fits because of the way he fights. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
So earlier, for instance, when Base was saying I was contrarian, I don't intentionally do that. I've just got certain sort of beliefs, ideas, and sometimes that will go against the public narrative, and I don't really shift on my ideas. And I'm very much a believer in styles making fights, and a lot of people use that phrase, but they don't believe it. They believe in levels. And because I believe in styles making fights, I actually agree with what you've just said. Teofimo Lopez struggled to enter the pocket against Sandor Martin, who is pretty upright and likes to keep the distance. He likes to keep range. And you saw that Tio's got some brilliant feet, some nice balance, but he's predominantly a counterpuncher. And when he had to be the one initiating the offense there, he struggled a little bit. With Nakatani as well, you saw that the range of Nakatani, because Tio isn't a guy that's in and out, and he tends more to roll with shots and come back at you, he struggled with that length, to have to roll with a shot, come back, and then perhaps as you're coming back, try to close the range. Whereas somebody like Ryan Garcia, although he's technically not on the level of Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez, you're talking about a guy who's tall, who's rangy himself, who's perhaps a better athlete even than Devin Haney. He certainly hits harder than Devin. He's faster hands. Yes, he's got an issue with that attempted shoulder roll. He's clearly trying to learn that at the moment. But against a guy like Devin, who likes to pop you, change the level, get quite low, pivot out, or bounce back out to maintain range, he's not going to really need to be using that too much. They're 3-3 in the amateurs, so there's a backstory there as well. Stylistically, I can see a way in which you could make an argument that Ryan Garcia is actually a harder fight for Devin Haney than Teofimo Lopez is. But if you're talking about who the number one guy in the division is at the moment, I would say it has to be Teofimo Lopez, because I personally do believe that Josh Taylor beat Regis Prograis legitimately in a very close fight. But since then, he arguably lost to Jack Cattrall. So you've got a guy there that's arguably beaten the guy who was the lineal champ. I also felt that Regis Prograis actually lost to Zorrilla. And I'm not surprised at the way the Haney-Prograis fight went. I did a preview video, a breakdown on all the elements that I thought he would really struggle with and why I felt it would be a pretty comfortable win for Devin. I didn't think he would look as spectacular. He looked brilliant. I thought maybe towards the last 2-3 rounds, you might start to see Prograis start to get a little bit closer after working the body. That never came to fruition. But his limitations don't marry up well at all with Devin Haney's strengths. With Zorrilla, you saw that when he was using lateral movement to circle the ring, he wasn't doing anything too special to maintain range. He'd be moving in one direction, he'd drop a shoulder as though he was going to move to the left and then move back to the right. And the constant reset of Prograis, having to bring his feet, he brings them close together sometimes, and having to sort of bring them apart, set and throw punches. And his stab jab doesn't have much coverage on it. He doesn't step into it in the way that Devin Haney does, Deontay Wilder, Billy Joe Saunders. He doesn't cover that range when he's throwing that jab. I always knew he was going to have real problems closing Devin down. And so from a stylistic perspective, I thought Devin was always going to look great. And if you just look at where they've both been at, in my opinion, the guy that beat the guy and stuff like that, I have to have Tio at number one. But stylistically speaking, you're right. I think Teofimo may very well struggle with Devin's style. Having said that, just a last little caveat to add, Tio can bang. He's a big puncher. And Devin Haney's never really been in a situation where he's been hit consistently by somebody that carries power. And because Teofimo does have really good balance, there is a possibility that he will be finding a home a lot more frequently than anyone that has fought Devin, apart from maybe Lomachenko. But Loma doesn't have that one-punch knockout power. And so there is the possibility that he slows Devin down to the point where he can then take him out late on. But I do think early on, Devin would build up a lead. So it's one of those where it's all up for grabs, I think, at 140. And that's what makes it so exciting. And hopefully these guys actually want to get in the ring with each other, because we're seeing certain sounds, certain noises come out that I don't like, where Devin Haney was asked if he wants to go for undisputed, and he said he wants to go for the big money fights. I think the last thing any of us want to see is for him to go and say, I'm going to fight Rolly because it's the big money fight. Then I'm going to go and fight somebody who's a lot lesser than, say, Subriel Matias because, who knows him? No, I think you should try and conquer the division. I think all these guys should do that. And that's how we end up getting the best fight in the best.
With that being said, though, Chris, I do think at the very least, when all the dust is settled and cleared, I do think we will probably get Haney versus Tio. I think that's a great fight. I think maybe
So,
we'll get. Yeah, I think we may get like Ryan's going to get a title shot. We know that, but I don't think he'll be successful in that. And then, like I said, once the dust is settled and cleared, I do think we will get Tio versus Haney at the very least, because I do think that's a very sellable fight. Matias, I like Matias, but I do think that's a great style matchup for Haney because of the foot speed. I don't think Matias has the quickest foot speed, and I think he squares up. And Haney will try to not go deep in the pocket with him too, and I think he'll be able to survive. But it is kind of a fight that no one's going to take. Go ahead, Chris.
He does have a 71-inch reach. It's only an inch shorter than Devin's though. And so because he brings that incessant heat and pressure, if he can make Devin work, again, there's a question mark how that goes down the stretch. Yeah. But also, I think as boxing fans, forget the business side of it, forget the industry. As fans, I find it uncomfortable to push the idea that it's understandable, it's okay for one particular fighter not to get a shot because he's not sellable. Otherwise, what are we doing here? It's not a PR exercise. The fact of the matter is you've got champions, and the champion should be willing to take the scalp of the other champ. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, as fans, we should want that. I agree. Lee, you get to rank fighters once in a while, right? I believe. How would you rank this junior welterweight division, and where would Devin Haney end up?
It's a terrific weight class. It has been for a number of decades now. Going back to Julio Cesar Chavez and Mildred Taylor when they fought in 1990 to unify. Had two of the best 4 or 5 fighters in the world going up against each other, and the division has pretty much been operating unabated at that level since then. As far as who's number 1 in the division, I think at the time that Regis won the vacant WBC title against Zepeda, I believe, and he had such a wonderful performance, he was seen as the number 1 guy in the division. And then he had that performance against Zorrilla. It was in his hometown. He has said that he was distracted with all the hometown promotion and dealing with tickets and all the other outside stuff. And he had a bad performance against a late sub who fought differently than he did on the tapes. A lot of bad things kind of collected together at the same time. And even though both men ended up landing 42 total punches over 12 rounds, which is one of the lowest totals ever recorded by CompuBox in a championship fight, I was willing to chalk that up as a bad night at the office because this really was his first bad night at the office. But then we saw what happened against Haney. And in that fight, he landed 36 total punches, which, as was mentioned earlier, is the lowest total ever recorded by CompuBox in a 12-round championship fight. So you combine that performance with the Zorrilla performance, and you come to the conclusion that perhaps Regis is now experiencing what Joe Louis experienced during the latter days of his career. He would say, I saw the openings, but I no longer had the reflexes to take advantage of the openings that I see. And those back-to-back performances tell me that at age 34, Regis probably has seen his better days. He's still a great fighter, but he's not what he once was. So Ric Flair often said that if you want to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I still ranked Regis as the number 1 guy at 140 pounds, and Devin Haney, in his first fight in the division, he scores an overwhelming decision. It may have been against a depleted Regis, but he still beat Regis, and it was more comprehensive than most people thought that it would be. And then you add in the fact that he was a former undisputed lightweight champion. His stock has gone way, way up. Teofimo Lopez, he certainly has something to say about who's number 1 in the division because he defeated what probably was a depleted Josh Taylor back at Hall of Fame time. Teofimo has more star power. So in that vein, Teofimo could be the number 1 guy in the division because he'll draw the most money. So because of this conflict, I think that the best fight that can be made in the division, certainly the most noteworthy fight that can be made in the division, is going to be Haney versus Teofimo Lopez. But I'm not sure whether that fight is going to take place immediately, because by beating Regis, Haney has now inherited the mandatory title defense, and that is against Sandor Martin, who, according to BoxRec, is going to be fighting on Saturday against a 29-3 guy. So, should Sandor Martin get past that fight, he is in position to claim his shot at Devin Haney, and that would be an interesting style matchup, because you got boxer versus boxer. You got a guy who moves even more than Devin Haney does. Sandor Martin can make anybody look bad, absolutely look bad. Subriel Matias. Nobody was really talking about Subriel Matias in the aftermath of Haney versus Prograis. He's made 5 consecutive opponents quit on their stools. He's a dangerous man. He made 5 world-class fighters, including 2 in world title fights. One was 30-0 with a lot of knockouts, and the other guy that he made quit. I mean, my goodness. To make a professional fighter quit on his stool rather than go out and face what was coming, considering the fighter's code of never quitting, that has to be honored as well. He's probably the most dangerous man in the division. And then, as far as the WBA title, Raleigh's tied up. He is the champion in recess. There's going to be a secondary title fight between Barroso and Davis. I'm picking Davis to win that fight. And so Raleigh's got to fight Davis, even though that Raleigh wants to fight Ryan Garcia. He wants to fight the big names. There is O'Hara Davis and Ismael Barroso, who was robbed of beating Raleigh. So that fight's got to take place, and that's got to be settled. So right now, Raleigh is out of the equation. And I think if Ryan Garcia wants to become a world champion, he's got to go straight to Raleighville. I don't see him beating any of the other 3. So if that happens, you've got Teofimo, you got Haney, you've got Subriel Matias, and you got Ryan Garcia beating and becoming the 4th champion somewhere down the line, and that's going to be a hell of a round robin. I think in that vein, I see Haney coming out on the other side as the guy standing on top of the mountain. He's got a lot of Floyd Mayweather in him. He spent a lot of his younger years hanging around Floyd Mayweather, and I saw a lot of the same blueprint being played out against Regis Prograis. He stayed within his boxing envelope. He was very disciplined. Even when he had Regis hurt and down, he did not go for the finish because he respected Regis's power. That was a very intelligent thing for him to do. He had control, and he did his best to maintain control from start to finish. I think that discipline is going to serve him well. He is that enviable young veteran. He's 25 years old, but he has a lot of championship experience. He now has the victory over Prograis. I think that experience is going to help him. And as far as Teofimo is concerned, he performs a lot of times, and the Josh Taylor fight is an exception. He did have chaos in his life outside the ring before the Taylor fight, and yet he fought well. Before that, if he had trouble outside the ring, he carried his problems into the ring with him. He's just too unpredictable. You can't really rely on him to be the same guy every time. Devin Haney, we know what he is. We know who he is. He's going to be the same guy every time. I'm going to go with reliability and technique and experience and youth over volatility and power, which Teo has, and star power.
Lee, so the one thing I say with regards to that quote-unquote star power with Teo, I mean, Teo's never sold out the Garden or even the Hulu Theatre. Devin sold out a stadium in San Fran. I don't know what the pay-per-view numbers are, but he's been on pay-per-view a couple times, done decent-ish numbers. Tio hasn't been on pay-per-view as of yet, and he's not really even selling out, from what we hear, a 5,000 seater in New York, which is his home base. So I don't know if I could say that he's got the star power over Devin. It just from what I've heard.
One thing in regards to that, which all that's true, by the way, but the one thing I will say is it's been 2 years now where his fight was the highest, most viewed fight on television here in the U.S. Like his ESPN fight with Lomachenko was the highest viewed. His fight with Taylor was the highest viewed on ESPN or any other free television non-pay-per-view fight. So that's where it stands. But this year might be like being the tallest midget in the room because those ratings aren't that good. But still,
yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Base. I just think that Tio's very marketable. He does well with sponsorships and stuff. I think he's a star waiting to happen, but he's kind of, like Lee said, gone off track a few times, and that's kind of been a hindrance to him probably getting there. But Lee made some great points, and I want to kind of piggyback off one of the points he made about Regis Prograis, because I tweeted this out and I talked about this on the show that we did on Sunday. And 8 months ago, a lot of people were saying Regis Prograis was the best fighter at 140 because Josh Taylor had that struggle with Catterall and he was having problems making the weight. And he just, people thought that he was not capable of staying at 140 and being effective at that weight. And it's funny how the tables turned, because on Sunday morning, Regis Prograis was a shot fighter. He was too old. He had slow feet, and 8 months ago, he was the best thing since sliced bread. So that brings us to
sorry, just before you jump into the next one, quick question, because I'm not from over there, I don't know how much this actually plays out, but obviously we know like Mexican Americans usually is the biggest demographic in boxing because they have the biggest fan base, and then you maybe get the African Americans somewhere second or third. But Tio, is he Ecuadorian?
Ecuadorian, yeah.
Or is he
Honduran?
Oh, is he Honduran? Yeah, it's Honduran. That's what I thought. It was one of those.
Yeah.
So because of that, one thing I've heard is that he doesn't seem to get as much shine as maybe he should, because his national Honduran people, like, they're not really that prevalent. Same as like Puerto Ricans is one way, Dominicans, Cubans don't ever get a lot of shine because there's not a huge amount of them outside of Miami. How true is all of that, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it could play a factor into it a little bit. I would think, because he doesn't have like a Puerto Rican, because there's a Puerto Rican fan base, there's a Mexican fan base.
What I'll say is this: generally, if you look into it, Mexican American fighters typically are big like in their area, but they don't become like De La Hoya is an exception, obviously, but he was a gold medalist and all that. But like Ramirez isn't this big draw like that. Like Haney just did better than numbers than Ramirez has ever done. You know what I mean? This card, what astonished me about this card, what astonished me is that if you look at the card up and down, there was no Mexicans on the card at all. They had a women's fight. There was a girl from Australia and a girl from Japan, and they had almost every nationality except Mexican, and it's still, I don't know if it's sold out, but it did over 15,000. Which
they said it did 16,000, and they did call it a sellout.
It probably is a sellout per. That's probably as much as the fire department allows for boxing events.
Yeah, they did sell all the tickets, so technically they said it was a sellout. And then they heard that it did 300,000 pay-per-views. I don't know how true that is, but I do know.
What I'll say about Tio, he was at the cusp of becoming a star, and then he did that whole thing with Triller.
Yeah,
he was out of the ring for a year, and then he loses to Camboza. So
lost a lot of momentum.
People like new, shiny, beautiful things. That's what people like. You lose to Cambozas, you're gonna fall. It is what it is.
He lost a lot of momentum.
Also, guys, I've actually done a video on this topic in the past when TFM was complaining about it, and I was basically saying I understand he's frustrated, but I understand also the dynamics of why this plays out, and he just has to accept it. Because I remember when I was doing this video and he was talking about whether black fighters are being pushed in the United States, I looked at the demographics of the US, and there are 1 million Honduran Americans in the US. there are close to 40 million African Americans. So just when you look at it from that perspective, your potential fan base in the US, whereby there does seem to be an awful lot of people that will attach according to somebody they see as their own in terms of tribalism, their demographic, that's just how it is. You've got a 40 times potential bigger ceiling or fan base. And the fact of the matter is, this applies everywhere. I mean, even here in the United Kingdom, for instance, you will get a lot of British fans who will jump behind the British fighter. It's just a natural sort of development. You look at a guy like Daniil Yelusinov, for instance, a really, really talented amateur, Olympic gold medalist, undefeated as a pro. He was absolutely begging promoters for an opportunity. He was basically out there telling all of them, look, I'm a free agent, put me in with anyone you want. But because he's a very talented fighter and a potential problem for everyone, whilst not being particularly entertaining and not having a huge fan base behind him, he actually stepped away from the sport undefeated. An Olympic gold medalist has retired from boxing undefeated because he couldn't get fights. If he was British, if he was Mexican, if he was African American, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He'd be in there against one of the top guys now for a potential belt at welterweight. And that's just a reality that Teofimo Lopez is going to have to accept. You're going to have to try and transcend ethnic barriers to build a fan base, because
that's a good point.
It is what it is, you know?
That's 100%, because look, at the end of the day, somebody from Kazakhstan sold out the Staples Center and Madison Square Garden. Those are two different ends of the United States. That's very impressive for somebody that's not from here. And let's be honest, Triple G doesn't speak the best English, right? So like, and he became a star, at least as far as gate goes, and look at what Canelo was able to do with him as well. Teofimo definitely needs to captivate people, and I did think he was at the cusp of it. But look, you could be a quote unquote foreigner, come to the United States and become a star. Nassim Hamed did it. Triple G did it. Like, it's possible.
Duran did it. Arguello did it.
100%. So why can't Teo do it if he's from here? He could do it.
It's possible if you've got a very exciting style. So there is a ceiling there for Teofimo Lopez because he is exciting. But for a guy like Yelusinov, I think it's hard. I think with Triple G as well, a knockout puncher, was very aggressive in the way he would seek to enter to take out an opponent. And also, he was very smart in using terms like Mexican style. I remember before the build-up to the rivalry with Canelo, you had a lot of Mexican fans that really liked Golovkin as a result of that. So he was very smart with the way he played the PR game. Teofimo Lopez hasn't been as smart in doing that. And I think that plays a role as well, how you sell yourself, how you package yourself, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that. So back to the point with Regis, like I said, 8 months ago, greatest thing since sliced bread. A lot of people said he was the best junior welterweight in the world. Now, all of a sudden, he's a shot fighter. I don't know, man. Like, can you really name five guys better than him right now? I mean, I still would consider him a top 5 guy. I'm going to ask you, Krista, do you think Regis Prograis can ever become a world champion again, or do you think he just reached the end of the road right now for himself?
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Evans Kobler, he fixing to knock the next lad out too, as well, right? So, yeah, where is Regis? I'm not sure where he at now. Devin Haney is a top. He is the top of the line, right? He has a level that not everyone is capable of being at. So to compare him to Devin Haney, I don't think that's quite fair. But nothing is fair in boxing. We have to remember that. We know that. So where does Regis stand? I'm not 100% sure at this point. You know, the age is a factor here as well. So I don't know. He need to make a statement in order to keep himself anywhere near speaking a speaking point for fans to be.
So we talked about this before, D-Style. If you put Regis in there with a Ryan Garcia, you put Regis in there with a Rolly Romero, even a Subriel Matias, I mean, that style kind of plays into the counterpuncher's hand. That could be an interesting fight as well. Can you really name 5 guys better than Regis Prograis right now?
At 140, no. Let me just look. If being champion of the world meant there's only one dude and that's it, and then it'll be a harder question to answer, right? But let's be honest, we live in an era where like becoming world champion could be very circumstantial. It could be like it could almost fall in your lap under the right circumstances. And it doesn't quite mean you're better than some of the contenders that, even if they haven't become world champions, maybe they had a rougher road or whatnot. The reality is, right now, I would favor Regis Prograis over Jose Ramirez. I think he butts up Ramirez. I think it's an easy fight for Prograis, just like the Zepeda fight was, right? I think under the right style, this guy is dangerous. But look, I would favor Super Matias against Prograis. I would. However, I seen Matias get knocked out before. I seen him get hurt and stopped before. It's not like he's this unstoppable machine. So there's a way to do it. Now, Matias has improved. He's gotten better. He avenged the loss. I'm not defining him by his loss. What I'm saying is it's possible to beat him. And if Regis cracks him with a good one, you never know. Like, I'm just saying, Regis can crack. And I think Haney knows that. That's why Haney was on point in this fight and really made him break the record for least amount of punches landed, because he basically said, well, you ain't going to hit me. Speaking of the strength and conditioning coach at Tobler, I remember he was actually on Women Crushing the West, and he said, what you going to do, Haney? What you going to do? Well, when Regis comes after you, like Hulk Hogan style, and like, well, we found out he's not going to let your dude lay a glove on him. That's why, right? And I just think Devin Haney would do that, if not worse, to Ryan Garcia, to a lot of the guys from top 4 up. He would do that to them. I don't think Ryan Garcia, this is my opinion, Ryan has a shot early to land something maybe, but the longer that fight goes, the more one-sided it becomes, in my opinion. I don't think Jose Ramirez can lay a glove on him. I don't think Zepeda can do anything. I don't think Hitchens, as much as he's talking, is ready for Devin Haney. I just don't. So, can he? Yes. Rolly Romero became a world champion, man. Of course, Regis Prograis should become world champion again, especially if we put him in the ring. Does anyone here believe that Rolly Romero beats Regis Prograis? Because I don't.
No.
Like, I just don't. If that's the one, then hey, it is what it is. But I actually do think, write it down. All right. Get a stone, get a chisel, carve it up. D-Style said Regis Prograis will be a 3-time world titleist. There we go.
D-Star, what fight did Matias get knocked out in?
It was a while back, but
he avenged it.
He didn't get knocked out in that. He lost on points.
Well, he was hurt, right?
He
got
was
knocked down at least. I'm sure he got knocked down, wasn't he? Yeah, he was
I
down
know he took a. Yeah, I think he took a big shot.
Okay, base.
I was asking. The reason I was asking is because I was like, hold on, has he been knocked? I wanted to know what fight.
Anyan beat him, and he did avenge the loss, and he actually, Anyan actually retired the stool.
Yeah,
he was number 3 on the list of 5.
Okay. So Chris,
but he was down in the 7th. Yeah.
We talk about styles making fights, but sometimes levels determine outcomes, right? And in this fight, Regis Prograis had a problem with styles and I think levels. I mean, Devin Haney had him beat dead to rights in both areas, but not everyone in this division will have those 2 advantages over Regis. Are you ready to kind of call it a day for Regis, or do you think he's still got some stuff left in him?
No, I think D-Style's 100% right in what he says about how sometimes an opportunity can fall into your lap. We do often see fighters have paths that are manufactured. I do think there are a number of guys in this division who are very good fighters. Obviously, we know Devin Haney, we know Teofimo Lopez, you've got Hitchens there, you've got Arnold Barbosa Jr., you've got Gary Antoine Russell, who's hanging around somewhere, you've got Sandor Martin, who's tricky, Lindolfo Delgado I really like as a fighter, Liam Parro. There is depth here. There are Jack Cattrall. We can't just write these guys off, I don't think, as, oh yeah, none of them could beat Devin Haney. Devin Haney is supreme at what he does. I think he's elite at what he does. But I felt he lost the Lomachenko fight. And apart from Lomachenko, and even with Lomachenko, he's fighting guys that are consistently smaller with a smaller reach. And that's fine, but it's a specific style that he seems to do very, very well against. And that's why I'd be interested to see him in there against different styles as well. With regards to Regis Prograis, because I felt that he was always going to look bad against this style for the same reason he looked bad against the Zorilla, against Zorilla. If he's up against a guy where he's actually finding the target, his power's not gone. He does have some upper body movement when he's in the pocket. He's got some problems with his feet and closing the range. But when a guy's going to come to him and he's got that upper body movement that ability to change the level, hide behind the bladed stance when he's doing it, and he doesn't have to chase, he'll be landing. He's not going to be landing 36 punches against other fighters in this division the way he did against Devin Haney. So in that scenario, there are a number of guys who could potentially have titles where he ends up knocking them out. By the same token, it's easy to really sort of run down even a guy like Rolly Romero. And I totally understand that, because from a technical perspective, there are so many deficiencies there. I too felt that the last fight was a robbery, really. It was a gift to him. But once again, one thing you have to say about Rolly, he's heavy-handed. And in the last couple of fights now, we've seen Regis Prograis hurt. Now, Devin Haney is not a puncher, traditionally speaking. I know a lot of people feel he's gone up a weight division and suddenly he's developed this punching power. I don't think you can land on somebody that consistently who's fallen into shots and not take them out. The first knockdown, he was up on the count of 1 or 2. It was a flash knockdown because he tried to, the way Rolly moves, the way Regis moves, he'll step with the he'll sway with the pattern of the step. Unlike, say, Canelo Alvarez. Canelo will put his front foot forward and sometimes he'll come in behind it. Other times he holds back. Other times he'll slip and change the head slot. So it's harder to read the pattern of entry. With Regis, that's not quite the same thing. And as he gets caught, he's trying to pull out, his feet get too narrow and he gets dropped. After that, he starts falling into shots. So I'm not 100% sold on this idea that Haney's a massive puncher. And yet he clearly hurt Regis on a number of occasions. If Rolly was to land a big shot, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he stops Regis. We don't know at his age currently, what is his punch resistance like? So it's almost like a question mark as well over Regis Prograis in terms of where he's at, in terms of his age, his sharpness, but stylistically speaking, with the right type of opponent in front of him who's there to be found, you can't write off Regis either from winning a world title. So a lot of the times it's about manufacturing a path. And this is why I like to see everybody go for undisputed rather than manufacture a path with names that might be big names, and fighters will sit there and say, I'm the best in the division because they've beaten a couple of big names. Then you've got a third name who's not quite as big, not quite as respected from the public, but stylistically might actually be wrong for the champion. And the champion's then got an out. He's got an ability to find an excuse not to fight him. I don't want to see that. Fight everybody, face all styles, and I apply that to all of these guys. So I can't write off Regis. I think it's a very good division, and I hope we get to see a lot of fights occur with these guys fighting each other, not just because he's had 2 bad performances, we have to necessarily write him off.
Do you think Matias may end up being the odd man out here? Because it's like no one's calling, everyone's like talking about fighting each other, but no one's talking about fighting this guy. And
it's like that Rigo situation. Do you remember when nobody was mentioning his name? They were all talking about each other. Frampton, Scott Quigg, Donaire. At the time, they were all calling out each other, and it was like Rigo didn't exist. And you're sort of getting that situation now. He's in the Who Needs Him club. Subaru Matias.
So Lee, we've been there, done that before. We've seen guys in this situation before, and a lot of times they come back and surprise us. Could Regis come back and surprise us?
Yes, he can. I mean, look how highly he thought was. Look at how highly he was considered before the Haney fight. It was seen as a 50-50 fight, and then sort of like Crawford versus Spence, we thought that was a 50-50 fight, and that turned out to be extremely lopsided because when we were predicting the fight, we were thinking of the Spence who fought before Danny Garcia, and when he came back from the car accident and all that, he showed himself to be different because he didn't show any ill effects from the car accidents and everything else. And then against Crawford, it all fell apart. Same thing with Regis Prograis. Against Uria, he gets dropped, but it wasn't counted as a knockdown. And then he gets dropped again with a sharp punch by Devin Haney. It wasn't a devastating punch. It was a very well-timed and very fast punch. He probably never saw the punch coming. So when when we were weighing Regis versus Haney, we were talking about the Regis who beat Zepeda for the title and looked so good and didn't have a really off night until the Zarria fight. So that Regis didn't show up against Haney. And Haney also deserves a lot of credit for what he did technically. He made Regis look bad. Regis was not at his best, but Haney made him look even worse than that. So I agree with the other panelists who say that you put the right style in front of Regis, somebody who will engage with him, someone who will be on the inside with him. Regis has a terrific jab. He's a terrific body puncher as well. Anybody who will swap punches with Regis Prograis does it at his own risk. So, given the right circumstances, given the right opponent, he can win a world title again. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right, let's kind of shift gears here. It's kind of a TMZ type story this week. It's been all over Twitter, and it's still out there, hasn't gone away yet. Clarissa Shields with the sparring footage that was released by Archer.
Did it go to base?
Did I go to your base? I'm sorry. Go ahead, base.
You can.
No, go ahead, base. Go ahead, base.
Real quick, I think. Look, he can. I don't think he will because time's not on his side, and let's be honest, he's not going to get the Rolly meal ticket because Rolly is going to do any and everything in his power to save himself for Ryan Garcia, or if he really, really has to, you've got O'Hara Davis and Ishmael Barroso in the queue. He has to see one of those two before Regis gets a look in there. Regis could go the Subriel Matthias route, and he's got a style that can actually beat Subriel, but the problem there is that Regis has been looking a bit punchy in his last couple of fights. I think the Zepeda fight, he took quite a bit of damage in that one, even though obviously he won it and won it quite convincingly. He still took a lot of punishment. The Zarria fight, while he didn't take a huge amount of punishment, he still did, get unofficially dropped, and he did get hit a few times as well. It was just, and then obviously he took a very, very one-sided beating for 12 rounds in his last fight. So he's 34, about to be 35 soon, or I'm not sure exactly when he is 35, but there's a couple. He's got maybe 1 year of eliticism left in him, in my personal opinion, but I think the punch resistance is starting to wane, and his most realistic opportunity at getting the title is against not necessarily the hardest puncher, but the most devastating puncher in the division, which is Subriel. And I don't know. Obviously, yeah, it's who lands first kind of thing, but Subriel just got a style that ultimately it will just wear you down after a while. And at Regis's age now, and sort of what he has been through, and the up and down in how he used to make weight and what he's doing now, he's never always lived the cleanest. I just think Father Time could maybe not be on his side. So just because of that, primarily, I don't think he will see another title. But yes, if all the belts now got scattered and fragmented, and no one was holding them, and there was like vacant titles to be won, there is a path to engineer him to that. But in this current run, the length of time it's going to take to engineer himself into either a mandatory position, or I guess for someone to put up enough money that someone, the one of the champions, will be tempted to fight him, I don't see it happening at least until sort of like mid to late 2025, and by then I think it would be too late.
Okay, so some people say that he can become champion. Some people say he can't. So the jury is still out on whether Regis Prograis can still continue on at a high level. So getting back to the Clarissa Shields situation, this kind of caught my eye a little bit because I heard that she was talking a lot and saying a lot of things, and this boxer got tired of hearing some of the things she was saying about him. So he released the footage, and not too many people are on her side on this one. So I just think this goes to show that, females should just fight females and males should just fight males. I don't understand, why she has this obsession with wanting to box guys. What do you think of this whole situation, Base? And I mean, she's threatening to sue everybody who posts this video. And ever since she said that, more and more people just keep posting it, and they're waiting to be sued. So I don't know, man. I just think this is this just pretty much tells the obvious that she shouldn't be messing around with guys in the ring,
Funnily
I should
enough,
say, in the
yeah,
ring.
yeah, I get you. I get you. Now, funnily enough, I actually addressed this on my live stream earlier for my 200th episode. Yay, go me. Um, but I never believed her from the whole, we took out the padding thing. The whole story to me, it didn't make sense. I think a bit similar to, I think D-Star, I know you did a video earlier on this week, a good one regarding this and how it didn't make sense to you. It also didn't make sense to me. I was posting on a lot of people's on X and on Instagram. Yeah, I don't really believe the story. And it's just a case of, all right, if you are in there and you have to spar guys because there's not enough sort of girls in your weight class, I think you need to understand that even if you're getting good work with them or you're getting the better of them in sparring, realistically they're probably not going all out because they in their head they're still looking at you as a woman. Even if they're testing you, they're not gonna put 100% force behind every shot that they throw at you. And this is just a clear example of what happens when, I don't know if, apparently she was shit talking and she was fouling and stuff, and he got tired, and the coach said, all right, well, catch her with one. And bear in mind, at this point, she was just coming down, I think, to like 160, but she was fighting up at 168 and just coming down to sort of 160. And he's a guy that was competing at 140. So a guy that's 28 pounds lighter than you, like cracks you like that, and you're an elite level fighter in the women's code, and he's a raw novice in the male code at that point, that just shows you, like, stop calling out men. Like calling out Triple G was that was egregious in itself. Keith Thurman, for as inactive as he is and as washed as he potentially is looking right now, he still looked pretty good against Barrios, to be fair. And like skill wise, she can't realistically think that even if she thinks that skill wise she's on that level, like everything else is just not in her favor. So I've never really liked her constantly comparing herself to men, but I've always had the issue with her, like her incessant need to demand respect rather than, I feel like you earn it. And I look at her and I look at the way sort of Jairo Pataya, for instance, goes about getting respect. He doesn't want to talk. He might say he's the best, but he said, look, my respect is earned in the ring. I want to get in the ring and earn it that way. He doesn't then shout to everyone saying, I'm the greatest now because I beat Bray. He's like, there's more people to go. Like, I want the big fights. And once you get to that platform, sooner or later, even if the people didn't warm to you at the start, they're gonna warm to you. But it's like, even when she did the rebrand to come over to the UK, all of a sudden people were starting to like her, but she just couldn't help herself. And then she just went back to old Clarissa. And she very much reminds me of, those people that are just naturally self-destructive. They don't trust anything that's too good. So they just got to self-sabotage it so that at least they cut out on their terms and no one else took it from them. That's what she feels like to me. Someone that just she has to wreck it before someone else has the opportunity to. And every time I almost want to feel some kind of interest for her, she goes and does that. When I heard the story about the upbringing, I'm like, okay, on a personal level, I can maybe understand why you were the way you were, but you look like you're turning it around. And it didn't last. She got a lot of grace after the Savannah Marshall fight. Then she was on Twitter at the time, like constantly, day after day after day, trying to ram it down people's throats who thought that she might lose. And it's just, everything about it is just nasty work. So I have a hard time believing that, yeah, this guy, quote unquote, took padding out the gloves to teach her a lesson because she was, giving it to him large in the sparring on the Monday and the Tuesday. And so we had to come back and get his revenge. That it just doesn't sound like a believable thing, especially when in 2021 she was out here saying that I've never been hurt in sparring, I've never been dropped in sparring, I'm here KOing men left, right, and center, beating their ass, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, to now I then have to walk that back. Oh, actually, well, I was dropped once, but he took the padding out the gloves, and I went to go get a knife. The whole thing is just like, you're clearly hurt by this situation, and rather than just going or that where she says, oh, well, everyone gets dropped in sparring, it's nothing, it doesn't mean anything, but yet you want to be serving quote unquote cease and desist letters and lawsuits and blocking people. Clearly it's something that triggers you because you for some reason you've got some kind, it's almost like a Napoleon complex or penis envy. That's what it feels like. It literally feels like she's got penis envy.
Base. Whoa.
And that's what it feels like. She wants to prove that she's better than the men because she doesn't have what the men have. That's what it feels like. And I'm gonna leave it there. But the whole situation's foolish. I wish her healing. I think she needs some help, and I hope that she gets it sooner or later. That's my opinion.
No, all jokes aside, I do agree with you, Biz. I do think she's overcompensating for something, and there's something missing there, and then seems like she's trying to find it. But Chris, this is a no-win situation. If you're a guy, you go in there, you take it easy. Oh, this girl's giving you the work. You go too hard. Oh, you're a woman beater. You're a bully, right? So why do these situations even occur at this point? And you know, I don't know. Like I said, she's overcompensating, going out of her way, trying to like prove something that doesn't really need to be proved. You don't have to fight men.
So here's the thing, right? This time I'm actually going to be contrarian, just for the sake of the argument, just to try and be fair. Okay. I understand that when you're a woman who wants to make it in a world like boxing, whereby she would have been probably discouraged a lot as she was growing up, you have to have a certain level of confidence which borders on delusion. And any great fighter has to think they are capable of beating anyone. So in her mind, if she was to ever come up against a woman, for argument's sake, who had the exact same attributes as Golovkin, she can't think to herself, oh my God, she's gonna destroy me. So she has to find a way to convince herself, I can beat anybody. So from that aspect of it, I kind of understand. In other words, I never held it against her when she was talking about, I'd beat Golovkin, I'd beat Sean Porter, I'd beat Keith Thurman. There's no way, she has no chance. But I don't blame her for thinking that way. I get the mental process. The problem with Clarissa Shields, though, is that I think she has this mentality of, and it can work for a lot of athletes, and I think it works for her, of it's me against the world. And so when you create that type of mental position, when you're then going to get a result that goes your way, you're going to ram it down people's throats because that's your moment. Everything that you've been pushing down and holding down, all that rage, when you release it and win in the ring, now you want to go back and tell people, I told you so. And I think she struggles with that balance. So what happens is when she then gets dropped by a guy in sparring, all of a sudden she goes back into that place before any fight where she proved herself. People are doubting her. People are saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And now she wants to prove people wrong. And in her mind, everything that I've achieved up to this point, people are now undermining because, you know, if I can't beat this guy, how about all the other things that I've said? And I think that creates a chaos, a panic within her. So I just think, without knowing her, I've got to be fair, I've never met her, I've never spoken to her. But to me, she comes across as a little bit immature, shall we say, from an emotional perspective. And a lot of the things that have worked for her, she doesn't know how to use them as tools to create a PR, sort of a persona to sell via PR. She's definitely, in my opinion, delusional about her capabilities. And I just don't think it comes across very well to the public. I can't possibly say what happened with the padding in those gloves. But one thing I'll tell you, having been around a lot of fighters, men and women, and I'm saying this not to run down women, but rather to protect women. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. But if you're talking about people of a similar sort of level, so I'm not talking about a highly trained woman against a guy in the street that can't walk up a flight of stairs without being out of breath. You're talking about two professional fighters. The woman just isn't going to be able to win the fight. There's too much of a discrepancy, physically speaking. And I think one of the problems that occurs with this is that, and I'm not meaning to get political here, people can have all the political opinions they want, but when we're talking about boxing, when you're talking about certain people that are trying to push the idea that a biological man can claim to be a woman and fight against women, you're putting women in danger. This is just the reality. And you are also sacrificing the dreams of these young girls who have grown up wanting to become superstar athletes, wanting to become Olympians. And there comes a point where You have to go past that idea of, right, let's be politically correct, or let me push for this specific political idea that I support because my political party supports it, or anything like that. We have to leave that aside and just look at this as a sport for what it is. And the fact of the matter is, if you're talking about a top level male fighter, if he suddenly decides I'm going to identify as a woman, these women are going to get hurt. And we need to put an end to that. And this is one example of Clarissa Shields being, an elite woman, being in there against a guy that nobody knows, and it was a heavy knockdown. And had that been a real fight, she's not surviving the first round. I promise you that.
So, Crystal, we have men's boxing and we have women's boxing for a reason. Why is this so hard for Clarissa Shields to understand?
Is it truly hard for her to understand? Or is she just speaking to speak? Because look at all the attention she's getting now. Every channel be talking about Clarissa Shields. Positive or negative, she's getting the attention she's seeking. I don't know that she mind if it's positive or negative. She liked the attention, right? So one thing I have to say though about Clarissa, I do see her with a group of peers, I would like to say, sitting, enjoying a meal. She get along just fine with them. But we put the spotlight on her, or someone speak negative of her, she very quick to jump, right? So, yeah, do I really care she be knocked down during sparring? As far as I'm concerned, sparring need to stay sparring. This is not something that we send out. But to be fair, if she calling it out, if this is the only way that this lad feels that he can help her to understand, she don't need to speak about these things, to each their own. But I truly feel like at this point, she getting the attention that she truly thinks she need.
Who's right or who's wrong in this situation? Is Artur's right, D-Style, or is it Clarissa right? What do you
Look,
side with here?
this is a situation where classic example of egos, right? Artur was asked to spar with Clarissa Shields. Clarissa Shields was perhaps talking too much during the sparring session, and his ego got involved, and that's when he went a lot on her and knocked her down. Her ego was then bruised because she was knocked down. She's questioning, like I never been hit like that. I've been boxing my whole life and nobody's ever hurt me like that. So you must have done something to the gloves. And she tried to stab the trainer, yada, yada, yada. Says nothing for years, has to bring it back up because obviously it's been bothering her for years. And his ego got bruised because she's saying she was getting the best of him in sparring. And he releases the clip in retaliation. And now her ego's bruised, and then now she's trying to sue people that share the video. Like the whole thing is crazy to me. And if they just followed the good old fashioned rule that we just don't talk about sparring outside of this gym, none of this would be a thing. It just wouldn't. And one more thing I'll say is this: I do think Clarissa Shields has like a chip on her shoulder, and I do believe that's part of what makes her a good fighter, why she trains so hard, and all that. I do believe that. But and I think sometimes it is borderline delusional. However, it is extremely dangerous to even be entertaining. I'm a guy that I want to put out the match before we start any type of fire. Like, you know what I mean? I just want to put it out, and I see the trajectory. I'm thinking ahead. What if a fighter does say, sure, yeah, I'll do an exhibition with you, champ, and they get in the ring, like maybe nothing happens out of it. Maybe somebody gets hurt. I just don't want to see it because Clarissa's delusion is one thing, but convincing people that women could fight with men is a completely different thing. And we can't have a delusional fan base either. The boxing fan base needs to be educated. They need to understand that these women fighters, the champions amongst champions, can't fight guys outside of the top 100 in their divisions. That's just a reality. So just like the women's soccer team, World Cup champions and everything can't beat a bunch of teenagers. Okay, that's just the cold hard truth. It is what it is, right? We just can't have that. And another thing, I get the fighters talk shit and they're confident, yada yada, but what she is doing to Derek Santos, accusing him of taking out padding in order to hurt her, okay, it's defamation, right? And he's already done interviews saying, I'm getting lawyers involved. And that it's getting very serious at this point. You don't just say stuff like that. You just don't. I don't care how bruised your ego is. You don't say they took padding out of the gloves. That's all I got.
That's a great point, actually. I just want to add that. That is a great point. But it's not just, it goes beyond just your personal delusion when you're actually starting to harm the reputation of other people.
Yeah, so it's crazy, Lee, because this footage has been out for 5 years. It was never released. And if someone took the padding out of their gloves when they were fighting you, you wouldn't like let that go. You know, you would have addressed it, right? So now that people saw the footage, now she's claiming that they were padded, taken out of the gloves, as D-Style mentioned, just because her ego's bruised. And as Chris said, she does have a chip on her shoulder. And sometimes that chip on a fighter's shoulder, as he said, could kind of light that fire inside them and could give them that edge. But where does that go too far? Where does the fire, sometimes you need that fire to fuel you, but sometimes that fire can also burn you up. Do you think she's at that point where that fire is starting to burn her up, not just fuel her?
You're muted.
Or you can make an argument that she's one of the 5 greatest female fighters who ever lived, and she did it in relatively few fights. She's a future Hall of Famer. And she is a very proud and a very sensitive person. She has an explosive temper. She's very easily triggered. If you approach her with anything less than 100% praise, she's going to come at you. And that may be a result of her upbringing. It was a very difficult upbringing. Abuse. I mean, her brother was jailed for assaulting the trainer of her opponent a few years back. So it's a very violent environment. And that's what, they say that a lot of people are a product of their environment. I don't think there are any winners in this situation. There really isn't. On the one hand, releasing sparring footage, there's a rule that, like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. In boxing, what happens in sparring stays in sparring. And so even though this was in retaliation for something that Clarissa said, releasing sparring footage is a line that is normally very much frowned upon. So by releasing the footage, he was wrong. But the way that she retaliated, how she reacted to it, she was in the wrong as well. She's going around saying she's going to sue everybody that shares the footage. Well, she opened herself up to a defamation lawsuit by publicly accusing Akhmedov and Derek Santos of loading the gloves. And that's a very sensitive thing in boxing, considering what happened in 1983 with Luis Resto and Panama Lewis, and basically ruined the career and ultimately the life of Billy Collins Jr. People of a certain age, and you could look up the picture, the after picture of Billy Collins' face after Luis Resto, who didn't have exactly the greatest knockout record, swelled his eyes shut. They remained shut for quite a while. He did fight again, but he was never the same. And so in boxing circles, loading or taking the padding out of the gloves, that's a very explosive allegation. And unless she retracts, he's got a hell of a defamation case. Now, as far as Clarissa Shields fighting men is concerned, she has only 1 TKO in her career. She has scored only 1 knockdown, or either 1 or 2 TKOs, but not much. She's not known as a puncher. 2, okay. And she scored 1 knockdown in her career. And so and she was knocked down herself by Hannah Gabriels in the first round of their fight. Now, she did get up and she did dominate the rest of the fight, but she did get knocked down by Hannah Gabriels. What makes her think that she can go in against a male fighter who is going at it 100% and win? She's a good technical fighter. She's aggressive, but there are levels and there are reasons why men and women are not competing on the same field. It's no insult to the women. The women are very good, but and the men are very good too. But you can't mix the two. That maybe you can mix the two in bowling, or on a pool table, or in other sports. But when you're talking about combat, that's a serious thing. Shouldn't happen. I think that if Clarissa had handled this a little bit differently, this probably would have been just a blip, a Twitter blip, a one-day story. But because she decided to go full throttle with this, we are now talking about this days after the fact. And good attention or bad attention, it's not doing her any good because it just adds to her reputation. A lot of people see her as being obnoxious in general, and this is just going to further that. I would hate to be your PR people right now. How do you fix something like this? I don't know. I'm glad I don't have that job.
Go ahead.
I hope Green wins and it shifts the conversation to her versus Green.
Did you want to say something, Chris?
Yeah, can I just quickly add, actually? I just want to ask Lee and Crystal a question because they both spoke about this bringing attention. But one of the things I have to consider is whether she's actually doing this on purpose. I know Lee was just saying that he doesn't think it does her any good, and I understand the concept behind that. But there were a lot of people who were even casual sports fans that I knew who did not like Floyd Mayweather to the point where they would tune in to watch him lose. That was their hope. And I'm wondering if you've got Clarissa Shields and her PR team saying, you know what, say something outlandish today, because listen, I assume it's actually her personality, but I'm just putting it out there. Say something outlandish today because we need you to be hated, so to speak, because the next time you're going to have a fight, she's going to be, I don't know if this is still going ahead, but there was talk of her fighting Savannah Marshall in an MMA fight. And then even if that's not the case and they have a rematch, Savannah comes across as quite sort of personable, likable person, very different type of character. It could be that she plays on this villainous character to get people to tune in, pay for pay-per-views potentially, in order to make herself a bigger star. And I was just wondering what Lee and Crystal, who spoke about the factor of attention, think about that as a possibility.
Well, I think that that base made reference to the fact that when Clarissa first came over to England, she presented herself as a pretty likable person. She actually did a pretty good British accent during one of the press conferences. I thought that was rather charming of her. She is capable. I think she is capable of being a pleasant person. I've had 3 different interactions with Clarissa one-on-one, and they've all been very pleasant. She can be a very nice person. But when it comes to boxing and when it comes to criticism, like I said, she gets very triggered very easily. And she just doesn't let things flow off the shoulder. She could just say, she could just look at people and say, scoreboard. Look at my record. Look at who I beat. Look at my resume. That's enough. I don't have to defend myself. My record speaks for me. I am the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. Look at my accomplishments. But she doesn't do that. It's not part of her nature. I think that she does what she does because she's very honest. She is very forthright. I think this is her. And the chips fall where they may. If she fights Savannah Marshall in England again, I think she knows what she's going to be walking into. It's the same thing that she walked into before, and she won. She legitimately won that first fight. The rematch should be very interesting, should it be made. But I think that Clarissa, I think she's 27, 28 now? So she is what she is. She is what she's going to be. She's probably not going to change. We're not going to see a George Foreman-like metamorphosis from young George to old George. We're not going to see, I don't think, a new Clarissa Shields. We have to accept her for what she is in the ring and out of the ring. I just hope that she can accept, the backlash that surely is going to come her way if she continues to act in this manner, especially the way she conducted herself in this incident, where she has opened herself up to defamation charges. Again, I wouldn't want to be one of her PR people.
All right. Big fight this weekend. Bam Rodriguez.
I think Christine
versus...
was going to talk.
Oh,
I think Christine was.
Did you want to say something, Chris?
No, Crystal's going to respond because he asked Crystal.
Oh, go ahead.
As well.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just fixing to say, I hear Mr. Lee say it and some other people that, we don't want to be the PR team. Who's to say that the PR team is pulling her back and saying, hey, stop? I don't think they can do that. I don't think they allow her, she allowed them rather, to do something like that to her. She probably tell the PR team, hey, I do me and you do you. I take care of me. Don't worry about me. So because of this is her personality. This is what she brings. I don't think the PR team probably have a problem. They just say, do what you do and we be here.
So she's not
to make the big money.
She's not PR coachable, is what you're saying, Crystal?
Well,
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I just want to say one more thing, and I know we've got 3 more topics out. I'm going to make this really quick. Look, here's the thing. One more thing. I spoke about fans need to be educated. If you just do an exercise, go in front of a brick wall and punch it with a bare fist. Okay?
Why?
And then put on a boxing glove.
Kids,
put on a boxing. There's a point here. There's a point. I'm being serious now. Hold on. Punch the brick wall with a boxing glove with a lot of padding on it. Which one are you going to hit harder? There is a misconception that you take out padding, to hit harder. That's not the case. Boxing gloves protect your hand, not your opponent's face. That's just the reality, right? If he wanted to, this idea that he took out padding in order to knock her down is laughable, okay? You don't see a lot of knockdowns in bare knuckle boxing because you're going to break your hand before you knock an opponent down, all right? So her saying this is definitely delusion, and the fans that believe it are not educated on what the purpose of a boxing glove is. I will hit a brick wall with a boxing glove any day than with a bare hand, and there's a reason for that.
And what was to be gained by Akhmatovs by taking the padding out? He's already fighting someone who is, he's fighting a female fighter. Why would he? What's to be gained from it? I don't know.
But she doesn't believe that, right? She doesn't believe that she's at a physical disadvantage based on what she says. She thinks that she would take Golovkin and Sean Porter. So in her mind, she has to find a way of trying to justify, why did I go down? Well, it can't be because he's too strong for me. So it has to be because he cheated. And it's that sort of similar mentality that I think Deontay Wilder went through when he was trying to convince himself why he was obliterated by Tyson Fury. There has to be a reason other than the fact that he's just better than me. And I think that's what I mean about the delusion that they create a lot of fighters in order to put themselves in a position where they don't develop a form of PTSD, perhaps. And I think that's where the delusion lies.
Yeah. And if you go back to the Resto case, like you talked about, Lee, when they took the padding out, the reason why they took the padding out was so the plaster that they wrapped his hands in could fit in the glove. And that was the plaster itself is what did the damage, not the fact that the padding was taken out. So the padding was taken out. So the plaster, they actually literally, we want to talk about plaster of Paris. They literally wrapped his hands in plaster and they hardened it. And that's what, that was what caused the damage.
Bare knuckles will cause more superficial damage. You're more likely to cut someone's eye,
you'll cut a
bone. But in terms of the power you generate to be able to load up, Dragon Style's right in that the way you load up, if your hand's wrapped, it's especially the wrappings rather than the gloves, to be honest. If your hand is taped in a solid ball, and then you've got the padding on top of that, you're protecting the knuckles and able to really twist through the shot. Yeah. So they do different things. In bare knuckle fighting, you'll see that, especially even back in the day in mixed martial arts, for instance, when you had heavyweight champions like Baz Rutan, they used to actually slap with the palm because you don't want to hit someone with your knuckles, because if you catch them on the skull rather than the cheek or the body, you will break your hand. So yeah, she's just looking for an excuse, I think, to convince herself and everyone else.
So let's transition. Sonny Edwards, Bam Rodriguez. Now, when this fight was first announced, I always thought this was a great fight, but the closer it got, I kind of got more and more excited for it. And I'm actually really excited for this fight coming up this Saturday. And also seeing the press conference today, Sonny Edwards kind of added a little spice to this fight. And I want to see how this thing plays out. What do you think, Chris? How do you think this fight plays out? What do you think of the matchup? And does it match up? Do these two styles make for a great fight, in your opinion?
Look, I have to put a disclaimer out there. I've been a fan of Sonny Edwards for a number of years. So I'm coming here with a little bit of a bias, you could say. And I try not to let that affect how I judge a fight, but it's only fair that I put it out there. I saw him training very, very early in his career. Nobody really knew about him. And I was telling everyone this guy's going to become a world champion. He's a superstar in the making. So now that we're here at the moment where he could potentially really step out, it would be unfair for me to sit here and tell you a prediction without telling you that. But I do truly believe in him. I think he's got unbelievable movement with his feet. He glides across a ring. I mean, like I said, I've been ringside watching him train. And when he moves, it's like watching an ice skater, a figure skater. He's so good at being able to change the angle and bring a little drop of the shoulder as well to just create extra space in. And you think you're going to land, and you see a fighter who'll miss by an inch, and they're so frustrated. And I think with Bam Rodriguez, I think where this fight will be decided is how well Bam is able to get to him when he's closing the range. If Bam is the one that's outlanding Sonny when Sonny's on the back foot, I think Sonny's in trouble. But I think what you're going to see here is that Rodriguez makes a few errors with his feet when he's chasing you against stationary opponents or opponents that are coming to him. He's wonderful at setting up step arounds and stuff like that. When he's the one that has to cut off the ring on you, sometimes he'll cross his legs, and there's a very slight moment where there's a bit of a reset just as he's about to throw. And I think Sonny will get him constantly resetting and will build up a lead. In the last few fights, Sonny Edwards has had moments where he's tired and he's gone back onto the ropes. And I actually think that might actually help prepare Sonny for this, because by going back up onto the ropes, he's become a lot better at I say a lot better. He's become very good at deflecting shots and not taking too much punishment, sort of rebuilding the fuel tank. And then in the next round, he gets on his feet again. I do have a question mark about the fact that it's in the United States and American judges do tend to favor aggression. So I wonder how that will play out in the scorecards. I think it's a terrific fight, because to give a counter argument to what I've been saying so far, Bam is very, very good with the pivot, very, very fast at doing that. And if he's able to change direction with Sonny and continually face him and be up against him, you could end up seeing a situation where Sonny's going to have to work in areas that perhaps he felt that he could be safe. And so I think you're going to see a terrific fight. They're both going to have their moments. I just think that when Sonny decides I'm going to get on the back foot and I'm not going to let anybody come too close, I just think he's very, very good at that. And I think he's going to end up winning a close points decision, but I think he'll be a legitimate winner. But I can totally see a path to victory for Bam Rodriguez, who's also a terrific fighter. These really are two immensely talented fighters. And if they were bigger men, if these were a couple of super middleweights, we would be in awe of them both. I think they're both superstars in the making, regardless of who comes out on top, especially Bam. If Sonny loses, there might be a rebuilding process. But with Bam being so young and he's already beaten some recognizable names here in the US, or there in the US, not here, there in the US, I think he's going to have a platform to potentially kickstart his name, really grow himself as a name. But even if he loses, I think he can catapult himself into becoming somebody who's well known because he's so talented. I think they're terrific fighters, and I can't wait for it.
Crystal, how do you see this one going?
Well, kudos to Mr. Sonny Edwards for coming over here to the United States and taking the fight. I think this is wonderful. I think it is big for his resume, right? I don't think this is a small task for him at all. I think Bam Bam wins it. I think Sonny Edwards, I think he'll give him some problems, but I think Bam will pull off the win, and Sonny Edwards go back home with a broken heart. Just like they say in the comments, he won't get a date with Clarissa. That would be a shame. But other than that, I think we will see a good side of Bam. I think Bam will bring something to the table, perhaps we don't see before. in this fight, I think Sonny will allow him to do that.
So D-Style, is this going to be kind of like the Bull versus the Matador, or how do you see this one going?
No. Look, I don't want any of this to sound like I don't think highly of Sonny because he's a great fighter. Okay, so, but I'm expecting a one-sided fight, and I think it's going to be in Bam's favor. I am. Sonny's good. He is, but he's not. Like I saw him like when he opened, and I'm glad he did because the fight needed something. Like the fight needed some fire, right? Like. And I guess when Bam said, he's acting different, he's not sure who he is, like that really set off Sonny. He took over look, he's going to win he has a gift of gab. He's going to beat Bam in that department all day, right? But when he says things like, oh, yeah, everybody talks about the game plan, but they can't lay a glove on me. Like, I see dudes lay a glove on you every fight. Like, he's a good fighter, but every fight they're laying gloves on you. They're putting hands on you every fight. And yeah, and the commentators saying, "Oh, Sonny, he could make this a lot easier on himself, but he's deciding to make it exciting, get against the ropes." And like you were not trying to make it exciting. They put you there. I give Alvarado 5 rounds in that fight. Okay, now Sonny clearly wants 7 rounds. There's no path to victory or draw for Alvarado. Don't get me wrong. But it was a close fight. Now, Alvarado's not a chump or nothing. I'm not saying like that's a bad thing. Alvarado's pretty good fighter, and a good pressure fighter, so it's good experience for Sonny. But Sonny's had a lot of sunny days. All right? But he still can't get the job done against Bam. Right? That's a Bret Hart HBK reference, but like this is the thing. He ain't gonna be following this dude around. People think I keep hearing like, oh, how's he gonna cut off the ring? How's he gonna cut off the ring? Alvarado didn't have a problem cutting off the ring. Like, and who said he needs to go chase after him? You see, a fight I'm thinking of in my head is kind of like what Canelo did to Billy Joe. Canelo got in the back foot very early, started circling the ring. All right. Billy Joe got a little confident, and before you know it, they were both circling the ring. That's what's going to happen in this fight. He's not going to be chasing Sonny Edwards. And he does have the footwork to keep up with Sonny. He just uses it differently, okay? Those pivots of Bam, the shifts of Bam, I think are going to give Sonny Edwards all types of problems. He's going to keep this fight in mid-range, and he's going to circle the ring with Sonny. He's not going to try to cut off the ring on Sonny and go after him and all that other stuff. That's not what's going to happen. And when Sonny gets tired, he's going to revert to the ropes, and the combination punches of Bam are going to do a number on Sonny. And I say this respectfully. I think Sonny is a great fighter, but I don't think he's going to get the job done in this one. I will say this, though, and maybe Chris and Base can help me out with this one. If Sonny Edwards pulls this one off, I was talking to Joe about this earlier. If he pulls off this win, right? He's a slight underdog. If he pulls off this win, is there a fight of another British fighter in American soil that's bigger? This would be one of the biggest wins for a British fighter in American soil, at least per the odds, right? I can't think of maybe there is one, but
Hunnigan and Curry.
Okay, what was it? Do you remember the odds?
I think it was like 6-1 or something like that.
There you go, Joe. I told you about that one, Joe. You didn't listen.
That was a long time ago. That was a good one, Lee.
That's a good one. There you go. Those are my thoughts, and I'm
going to go back.
I will be live in HD in the building. If you're there, DM me on Twitter. We can meet up and all that good stuff. I'll be there in person to celebrate Bam's win. Let's go.
Lee, break this one down for me.
I'm really looking forward to this one. I think that Sonny Edwards and Bam Rodriguez may well be the best fight that can be made in the flyweight division. And it's taking place on the same night that Julio Cesar Martinez is going to be defending his WBC belt on the Showtime finale card. So you have the possibility of the winner of this fight fighting Martinez for 3 of the belts.
Real quickly, not to interrupt you, but that fight's canceled out of these issues.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for breaking the news, and thanks for.
No, but it's significant because Eddie Hearn's actually, because of that, he's asking Doug Fisher to reconsider and make the fight for the Ring magazine for Edwards versus Bam, which is a good argument because he's out of the picture.
Right, right. But going back to my original point before messing up there, you have the best pure boxer in the division in Sonny Edwards, and you have the best boxer puncher in the weight class in Bam Rodriguez. And you also have a class of personalities. We heard about what Sonny is like at press conferences, and Bam has this quiet confidence about him. So there's a nice contrast on that level as well. Now, Bam hasn't quite reached the levels of impressiveness that he did against Quadras and Sor Rungvisai in his last two fights against Israel and Christian Gonzalez. There's very good reason for that. Both of the Gonzalez's were younger and less well worn than Quadras and Sor Rungvisai. But you take a look, and of course, in the last fight, Bam suffered a broken jaw. I think it was in round 5 of that fight, and yet he dominated the last 3 rounds of that fight to nail down the victory. We all knew that Bam Rodriguez was a tremendously talented fighter as far as the physical skills are concerned. But for him to do what he did with a broken jaw tells us that he has the mental and the intangibles to become a really great fighter. So that's really special to me. Now, I've said it before and I've said it again. If it's going to be very, very difficult for Sonny Edwards to win this fight in America while on the back foot constantly. And that's really his style. That's how he operates. And it's worked for him very well up until now. But he's fighting in the United States where you have clean punching and effective aggressiveness are held in higher esteem than ring generalship and defense. And that's what Sonny Edwards is good at. I think that in the close rounds, Bam is going to get the benefit of the doubt because of his aggression and because he's a very accurate puncher and he carries a lot more power. Sonny Edwards has a 200 KO ratio. That's the second lowest among current champions that hold widely recognized belts right now. Adrian Curiel is number 1 in that regard. So for Sonny to win, everything has to fall into place. He has to frustrate Bam. He's got to get to the escape routes first before Bam cuts them off. He's going to have to land hard, clean, singular shots that snap back the head and get the judges notice. He's going to have to do that 3 or 4 times around to negate the aggression of Bam. And he's got to do it for, I would say, 8 or 9 of the 12 rounds to nail down the decision. That's a really hard ask. And I've been impressed by Sonny Edwards. I like what he does. I find it pleasurable to watch him box. I have an affinity for good, effective, moving boxers. But I also appreciate what Bam Rodriguez brings to the game. And against Quadras and Sor Rungvisai, what he did was absolutely breathtaking. And then there's the footwork as well. He as good as Sonny Edwards is as far as footwork is concerned, Bam is not that far behind. And he uses it to be proactive and to be a predator. I just see that that everything, a lot of things have to fall right for him in order to win. Not so much for Bam Rodriguez, and the fight's taking place in Arizona, which is Bam-friendly territory. He's going to have the crowd on his side. I believe that that Bam is going to come out with the decision victory.
All right, thank you, D-Style Boxing, for the $5 super chat. He says, "Lately, you've had some sunny days, my friend, but you still can't get the job done." HBK to Bret Hart. HBK won. All right. So, Base, Chris thinks this is going to be close, or he predicts this may be close. D-Style does not think so. Where do you fall here?
It's funny because prior to Chris joining the stream, remember myself, you, and Lee were speaking about this fight, and Chris made a lot of the points that I made to you. So I'd like to think that great minds think alike.
Oh, Chris is a
But
professor, Chris. I mean, come on.
I mean, he is. There's no arguments there. That being said, look, I usually come in here and I'll say to you, I'm not gonna give my prediction until I drop my video. But I literally at this point, I still haven't decided. I've looked at it from kind of both ways, and as I said to you before, I feel like when Bam has to go quote unquote looking for someone, he's not as effective. He doesn't look as good on the front foot as the back foot. He prefers someone coming to him. That's so that he can basically get them in a range where he can pivot off, unsettle them, get them into a sort of a shifted weight pattern, take advantage and land something hard that they don't end up not seeing. Whereas there's nothing in this fight that tells me at any point Sonny is gonna play the front foot. So unless, I mean, the whole circling thing, maybe D-Star was right with that. I haven't considered that as a method of victory in my head, but even in that mode, I can just see Sonny thinking to himself, "You've still got to come to me. I don't need to follow you right now, or you're gonna dance my dance. We're not gonna take turns, or we're not gonna cooperate. Like you're gonna either do what I'm gonna do, or you're gonna stand on the outside looking stupid." That's kind of how I feel his mindset is, and because he's the slightly taller, slightly rangier person as well, he can afford to basically wait for Bam to decide what he's going to do, because he can still land from a slightly safer distance. So yeah, it's just one of those ones where I haven't, to me personally, I haven't got that. I just haven't got the answer yet. I'm gonna have to give it soon, because I just got an email notification that my predictions league predictions have to be in I think within the next hour. So I'm gonna have a think about it. But I think, without necessarily really giving a prediction as such, I agree with the guys that are saying that Sonny has more going against him, for the pure fact of, if Bam even, if he does initiate anything, being in sort of Arizona, closer to Texas, closer to Mexico, that sort of area, a lot of those judges, they do look for that effective aggression. They look for that person on the front foot, even if they're not landing, it just looks like they're doing more. If you're pushing someone up against the ropes, you get extra consideration. And if Sonny ends up going on the ropes more than he should, or thinking, okay, well, because I do this in the UK and I get away with it 1, 2, 3 rounds, okay, you can have these ones, but watch, I'm going to get the other 9 easy. I don't think he's ever been in a position where he hasn't got those 9 easy. And when that sort of comes in, that might be where the trouble and the shock comes. I mean, if you even look at the last fight he had in June, he was complaining. I think one of the judges' scorecards gave the guy like 5 rounds or something, and he was like, "I counted 3 rounds where he outlanded me. How did they give him an extra 2?" So realistically, unless you've won 11 rounds cleanly in this fight, outlanded, out punch, probably maybe even drop Bam, you've got no guarantee that what you've done as effective work in your mind is going to be enough. So as long as he's coming in with the right mindset, then he's got a great chance. If he's not, then he could end up being very surprised at how the fight pans out. But I also think a lot of his antics at the press conference earlier was about just getting that siege mentality into his head. It's me against all of them. He's a cheater. He's a drug cheat. Watch, I'm going to beat him and all of this stuff. But then it's also, I think, trying to rile up Bam so that Bam does actually walk forward. He doesn't stay composed. He doesn't follow his game plan. He wants to hurt him so that he creates those openings. So it's going to be a very fascinating fight. The build-up has been good, and I'm looking forward to it. As I said, I can't give my prediction now. I'm going to have to do it in the predictions league. My video will be coming out very early tomorrow morning, so you guys can check there when I finally make a decision.
Go ahead, Chris.
So can I just say, right, one thing I will say, I can definitely see what Liam Bass is saying about the possibility of him, Bam, being given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the slow rounds and stuff like that. But for aggression to be effective, you still need to be landing the punches. In fact, all of the other metrics for judging a round actually still fall into the category of who's landing the punches. In other words, ring generalship. If I'm fighting your fight, let's say you're a pressure fighter and I'm a boxer, and you get me onto the ropes and you're forcing me to fight your fight, but I'm the one outlanding you, that doesn't mean you're winning the round on ring generalship. It means I'm beating you at your own game. So even if he's the one who's on the front foot and trying to pin Sonny, if he's getting outlanded, I don't want to hear later on people saying, yeah, but he was the aggressive one. You got to be outlanding him. That's the one thing I've been. Or if you're not outlanding him, you have to be hurting him. You know, you can't. It's got to be one of the two. You can't.
No, I agree.
Not be hurting him, not outlanding him, but because you're on the front foot, you're winning the round. Otherwise, Floyd Mayweather would never have won a fight in his life.
No, I agree with you, Chris. I agree with you. One thing I will say though, you've also got to remember there could be a lot of times where those shots, in the moment, you can't see if they've landed or they've been blocked on a glove or an arm, or you know, they haven't touched the body exactly, depending on the angle of the ref. So if all they see is the activity from one guy, that's still going to be an issue.
Another factor is just to consider. It's going to be a pro Bam crowd. When Bam throws combination, the crowd's going to go crazy. They're probably going to be booing a lot if for whatever reason Sonny decides not to engage much. So it's going to be a different type of crowd than Sonny Edwards is used to. But it could, even if a judge says to himself, I'm not going to be affected by the crowd noise, I mean, you could still get affected by the crowd noise.
Yeah,
so that strongly favors Sonny Edwards. I'm sorry, Bam Rodriguez.
And here's another thing too. If you're on the ropes and your shoe shining, or you're just landing flicker jabs and kind of get off me punches, and the other guy's landing, he's sitting down on his shots and he's actually hitting you cleaner, or his shots may have more impact. I don't know. Does one heavily impacted shot count more than 3 get off me punches or 3?
But that's the thing. How do you determine what are get off me punches? I hear a lot of people say, because here's the thing.
I'll tell you what it is. I'll give you my definition. I was always taught to throw a punch, you turn it over, you land these first 2 knuckles. And a get off me punch to me is you're just pushing it out there like this, what Shakur was doing against Dos Santos, I thought, and you're not turning the shot over. And you could just look at how it's landing and what part of the fist is. If you're not even closing the glove, and you're like, sometimes you'll see fighters who don't even close the glove and they'll just like flick their shot out. Like Scott Nicholson.
Snap. There's got to be snap behind it.
Like Sky, like what you got to turn it exactly. You got to turn it over and you got to snap the shot. If you're just pushing the shot out there like Sky Nicholson does, those are get off me punches to me.
So in terms of turning the knuckles over, you'll have a lot of Eastern Europeans, a Soviet system that used to place a lot of emphasis on that. But you look at guys like Larry Holmes, his jab was often thrown with the glove open. Tyson Fury often throws jabs with the glove open. For me, it's about the impact it has on the face. If I actually land flush on you, and it's enough to, just slightly even knock your head back, just so that I've seen a visual that it's connected. If I start to contemplate, okay, who's the bigger puncher? How much of a shot? How does the perceived lesser puncher ever win the fight? In other words, if you and I are boxing and you're considered the bigger puncher and I'm the lesser puncher, and I land 8 punches on you and you land 2 on me, and somebody says, well, Joe's the puncher, he landed the significant punches. Well, then it doesn't matter if I land 8 or 12 or 4, you're still going to get the benefit of the doubt, because people are just going to say your punches are worth a whole lot more.
Well,
as long as a shot's landing and it's having, I'm not talking about just touching you with the glove, but if I'm hitting the target.
But Chris, if you're throwing a punch with bad intentions, you're turning it over and snapping it, when it lands, you're going to see the guy's head snap back. You're going to see him kind of go like this.
No, that's different.
You're going to see it. But if someone's just throwing it out, like when Tyson Fury throws the flicker jab, that's a throwaway punch to set up his big right hand. Larry Holmes would throw the flicker jab, but he would also throw a hard jab too. He would throw 2 flickers to kind of get you used to that softer, slower rhythm. He'd go like this, and then he'd go like that and throw the hard one afterwards. He'd knock guys down with that hard one.
Like
sure, but there might be them. Sorry,
I'm not going.
And really, the difference between a flicker punch and a strong punch, when I'm like playing unofficial, official, watching stuff on TV, I see a round as sort of like a teeter-totter or something like that. You start in the middle, and if somebody lands a light punch, it goes like 1 this way. But if there's a hard punch, it's like 2 or 3 the other way.
Yeah.
And whoever ends up on this end or this end of it wins the round. It's a constant thing. And by doing it that way, you can't get fooled with a last 30-second flurry because you've taken account of what has taken place in the other 2.5 minutes.
Correct. And to your point, Chris, it's always going to be subjective. It's always going to be subjective.
Right, but we still need to consider some consistency, because like what the example you gave, if you hit someone and they rock, that's different. You've hurt them, you've affected them.
Or you
can
could see someone when they land flush, they may not bobble or wobble, but you could see their head snap a little bit. You know what I mean? Whereas if someone's throwing a flicker and they're just touching the guy and he's walking through the shot. Whereas
but there's the thing. If you're walking through the shot, you should be able to get to me then, right?
Correct.
If I'm keeping you off balance, if Sonny's going to be landing check hooks and Bam's not landing in return, are people going to be saying, "Oh, that's just a slap, so we're not going to score it"?
No, that's totally different, Chris.
Okay.
If Bam is not landing, right? For instance, to me, if Sonny outpunches Bam 3-1, but Bam is landing body shots, ripping them, and he's landing clean, like he's hurt, like he's having an effect. Like you could see.
How do you know he's having an effect if you can't visualize it? If you're not seeing Sonny slow down,
I'll tell you. Well, that's what you just said. If he starts hitting him and freezes him in his tracks,
I agree.
Then that's
Look, you guys are talking about a hypothetical round that hasn't happened yet. I mean, it's what it is.
No, but it's the typical way in which people score fights. Because I bet you we're going to see a situation here where the scorecards are going to be all over the place, and you'll have some people calling robberies, because you're going to have some people that will say Sonny Edwards was outlanding him, and you'll have other people say, no, it was Bam that was landing the clean and effective shots. Yeah. And that's where the discrepancy is going to come.
I agree with you. All I'll say is this. Look, I don't think it's going to be that close. Like, I just think it's going to be one of those fights where Bam whooped his ass. Like that's it. Like I'm just saying, that's my opinion, right? He's going to take Sonny to school. Like I don't think it's going to be one of those. It's going to be Lomachenko Haney where people are debating. I just don't think it's going to be that type of fight.
And Chris, to your point, the same discussion we're having right now, we all had, most of us had after Haney versus Lomachenko, because I was saying the same thing. Lomachenko's throwing those shoe shine shots, and Haney's ripping the shots to the body. I'm seeing Haney's whole fist land. I'm seeing Haney's whole fist land, and I'm seeing like Lomachenko.
Loma was snapping his head back, hurting him. Like,
see, that's the thing.
In those two later rounds,
in those two later rounds, he was hurting him, badly hurting him. That's a different thing. When they're up close early in the fight, even, and he's landing short uppercuts, and you see Haney's head bobbling around, if you're going to discount those as flickering shots, I'm sorry. That's, in other words, unless I load up on a shot, it means I can't win the round then.
Chris,
116, 113, Haney.
No way did you fight 8 rounds for Haney.
Chris, you know what
I had it 7-4 on one even.
Chris, you know what people were saying after the fight though? That was crazy.
You were wrong.
Since when did we start counting body shots? That's that. Oh, we're not going to count body shots anymore. Okay.
Yeah, but very few percentage of people said that. Most people didn't say that. Most people just felt Lomachenko took him to school. I agree.
This guy didn't, and I'll get it right.
I didn't think Lomachenko took him to school.
Let's look at the polls.
No, the polls don't matter. The judges do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go with the populace. I can't.
One of the judges gave him the round where he was hurt, by the way. I mean,
that is ridiculous.
All right. So
let's get back on track, people. 116, 113. Let's go.
We just got to get up tomorrow morning, man. So here's another one. Eddie Hearn in talks, or said he's interested in signing Jaron Boots Ennis, and he said that if he did sign him, he could make him a superstar in 12 months. What do you say to that, Crystal?
He needs to. Jaron Ennis need to. He need to become a superstar in 12 months. I have not seen much from this lad. I want to see more. He give me enough. I want to see more, but I haven't seen enough, right? So I do want to see it. I want to see what he can bring to the table here. I think this is his time to shine. Spence Crawford is now out of the way. So allow this lad to step up and let's see him roll with the division at 147. Why not? I'm waiting for it.
What do you think?
I'll be very brief because I really want to get to the Chantelle Cameron topic. So just really brief. I think that'll be a great signing for Boots. They've done nothing for him over there at Showtime. Obviously, Showtime's not around anymore. Look, if he goes to Prime, it's whatever, but you're not really a PBC guy, are you? Right? So I think it would be a really good move for him to go to the Zone.
Okay. What do you think, Lee? You're on mute.
Months? Oh, okay. Now,
there you go.
Have you heard now? Cool.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't know if Hearn can make Boots a superstar in 12 months, but I do think he should sign. Eddie should sign him if he can. It'll benefit both parties because although Boots was not part of the PBC family per se, he's been fighting a PBC type schedule. Boots has only fought twice since May of last year, while between April 2016 and December 2020, he fought 27 times. An active fighter is a better fighter. So switching to Hearn would surely enhance his work rate. Now, I think that for Eddie, Boots is going to benefit because he's going to fight more often. Eddie's going to benefit because he'll have a young, exciting, and explosive name. And with Crawford and Spence aging, he's poised to become the man at 147 pounds. And I'd love to see the process by which he becomes that man at 147. Perhaps a fight with Devin Haney might be in the future because, according to the California Commission, Haney weighed 165 pounds last weekend in the ring. So theoretically, he should have been fighting Canelo and not Regis Prograis. Okay? So he's ready to move up to 147 pounds, and hopefully Boots will be waiting for him.
What do you think, Base? You got Conor Ben. You could have Boots there. Even Virgil Ortiz. I mean, if Boots decides to go up to 154, there's a lot of fighters over there that he can mess with.
Well, if you look at it from the perspective of just like signing with Matchroom and getting the whole run of the Zone, then it's a good idea because there's loads of 147 pounders. But if you're looking at just Matchroom as a whole, they've only got Conor Ben. And as much as Eddie and Conor, as much as Conor might say, yeah, I'll fight Boots, Eddie's not going to put him in there yet because he knows that Conor's his cash cow. He's only ready to risk him against either a person of equal size or someone where there's a narrative, he went up in weight, done too much, blah, blah, blah. He's not gonna, I don't think he'll put him to Boots, but Boots should sign there, just for the Zone platform as a whole. You can get all of the Golden Boy roster. You got Rashidi Ellis still over there, Alexis Rocha. What's the one that beat Alexis Rocha the other day?
Santion.
Santion, yeah, him as well. Yeah. Even I think he's supposed to be going back down to 140 supposedly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got there's a lot of and he's a top ranked guy as well. But you've got a lot of these those sort of people around there, so you can get him a lot of activity and defenses. But if Eddie's signing him for hopes of the 147, he's probably going to be out of luck because I don't see Boots staying there past next year. He's already a massive guy. He's going to end his career at either the middle or super middle, and there's only so much longer he can make that 147. So yeah, get him in now, maybe just even start to sort of promote him and engage him for also the 154s that he's got in and around the stable, because Virgil Ortiz, he can definitely get that work and sort of move up. But yeah, in terms of activity, great signing. And yeah, I don't know if he can make him a star as such, because someone might look, well, he's got 30 odd fights, or he's coming up to there. Why am I only just hearing about him now? And then the jury might be out. It might be a bit of the Anthony Yard effect. But there's it's definitely a good signing, and and there's some other guys who aren't officially PBC that he needs to be looking at as well, such as David Morrell Jr. But that's another story.
Gotcha. Chris, do you like this move if it were to take place?
I think it's the perfect move for Boots. I think Boots is a fantastic fighter. I also think he's very marketable, actually. Do you remember the whole thing that he took on this little boy's case who had cancer and he was trying to raise awareness to find a donor for him. And I think stuff like that, I think when you're a tough guy who's a nice guy, a tough guy with a heart, I think it translates a lot to the public. And so you get him in there with a few knockouts that the public start to see about, you start to see what he's like as a personality. You get him in there with fights that are, you know, names that are recognizable, which the opportunity on the DAZN platform is there for him to do that. I think you can potentially have a star there. So I can totally see where Eddie Hearn's going with this. I think, and in terms of Devin Haney, yes, he's similar sort of natural size. There's a reason Devin Haney's been operating at lightweight. Keep him away from Boots. Get a restraining order against Boots. Do not let him near Devin Haney, in my humble opinion. But yeah, that's just, I think Boots is potentially a star in the making with the right promotion. And so far, he hasn't been given that right promotion.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're about a couple of weeks out after, you know, from this fight, and Chantelle Cameron's still complaining about things, about why she lost, complaining about the referee, Roberto Ramirez Jr., saying that he didn't do a good job officiating. But then you could see footage of her kind of doing some questionable things as well. So what do you think of all this complaining D style? Is this sour grapes? Because when Katie lost the first time, she didn't say a word.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I gotta be honest, I gotta be consistent. Like during the fight, I was tweeting out, "Yo, ref, what's up with the holding?" Like it's not like I'm like agreeing with her once, you know, like weeks later just for the sake of agreeing with her. Look, I'm not like a Chantelle Cameron like fan that's been following her career, or like I'm actually a bigger Katie Taylor fan. But and this is no fault. Look, Katie did a job. She won the fight. It has nothing to do with Katie to me. But I do think that the referees in general need to do a better job controlling holding in boxing. All right. You cannot just keep breaking it up. Like you can't just like, okay, I get that it's an infraction, so you break it up. But what you're doing is that you keep resetting the damn fight. Like I get why Katie was doing it, but if she wasn't allowed to do it, and the ref told her one time, Katie, stop that. All right. Just one time. How different is that fight? Is it a different fight or not? We don't know, right? We can't. I'm not Doctor Strange. I can't take everybody back in time and run different, scenarios. But I would bet that in most cases, if you get rid of the holding, excessive holding in particular, it'll make the fights more exciting. And Katie Taylor will have to use boxing skill, not holding an infraction, in order to stay afloat in that fight, in my opinion. Now, no fault to Katie. If I'm a trainer and she's getting away with it, I tell her to keep doing it. It's not about her, right? And I do think Katie could have pulled it off anyway without it. But I do see Cameron's point. Like KJJ did her thing. She, you know what I mean? It is what it is. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not. I'm very consistent about it, by the way. I'm not. Joe, you know me for years. I never liked holding in boxing, right? So this is not unique to this fight, or I have something against Katie. That's not what it is. Now, granted, with all that said, is she sour? Yeah, she's a competitor. Of course she's sour. Like, you know what I mean? Does she want to get back? Of course, right? And I'll just say one more thing. Let's do their fight in the UK. It's the place to do it. I understand Katie's a draw. She's allowed to fight in Ireland now, but she fought her 2 times, twice in Ireland. You could give her one in the UK. I'm just saying. And I will stand my square on that one.
Chris, I got to be honest. I just thought this was a gritty fight on both sides. I saw some rough and tumble tactics on both fighters. Is this sour grapes? I mean, did officiating really play that big of a deal in this fight, in your opinion? Be honest.
Look, it's a bit of both. Like D-Style, I've been someone that's always called out excessive clinching, and I do actually believe it can affect the outcome of a fight. I've also got a bee in my bonnet, and I have for a long time, about fighters that duck below the waist. Because again, you are disengaging. It's the equivalent of turning your back. Somebody's worked really hard to pin you up on the ropes. You duck your head below the waist and pivot out, or it helps initiate a clinch. Or if you're consistently clinching, you're basically saying, I can't fight in this zone, and I want us to stop fighting in this zone. Now, doing it a few times, okay. But when it's consistent, it's a problem. And when I say that I feel that it could affect outcomes of fights, one example that I've been going on about for a number of years, and I know I'm in the minority of people here, But I genuinely believe if Vladimir Klitschko was not allowed to consistently tie up Alexander Povetkin, he would have been sparked out in that fight, because at mid-range, he could not trade with him. So one of two things would have happened. He would have either been forced onto his heels on the back foot, forced to punch. That would have caused incessant pressure, and we know he's had gas tank issues, or he would have had to have stood and traded. Now, we know that Vladimir Klitschko is a big puncher. He might take Povetkin out. But Povetkin's a big puncher, and he's fast, and he gets low in that pocket, and he might have been the one to take Vladimir Klitschko out. Now, because of the way that fight went, and he was allowed to get away with murder, it was a historic fight at the time. It was a big heavyweight fight at the time. An Olympic gold medalist in Povetkin that everyone thought could be the heir to the throne. Then you had Klitschko, the current king, and it was a very one-sided fight. I don't think it would have been like that had the referee not allowed him to not just hold him, but at one point he had his feet off the floor like he was Superman. Like, you put that sort of footage of one man on top of another like that, you'll get arrested in 13 states. It was just too much. And so, you know, there are times I think where you can push the envelope a little bit too much when it comes to bending the rules. Devin Haney's a guy that bends below the waist consistently. And again, it's a method which stops the opponent from having a target. And you have to address these things. So for me, in my humble opinion, I'm not sure what these styles. Oh, hold on. In my opinion, the ref was strict with Klitschko's hold-in and something Povetkin is a bit blurred. But I think D-Style saying he agrees. D-Style?
Yeah, I posted this in 2015. I said, in my opinion, the ref was strict with Klitschko's holding and leaning on Povetkin. It would have been a tough fight.
There you go. And so I'm 100% in agreement with D-Style. Now, with regards to Katie Taylor specifically, they were both doing some things in there. But here's the thing that I understand from Chantelle's perspective. She was saying that she's really upset at the fact that it felt like Eddie Hearn was really celebrating the Katie victory. Now, she's the cash cow for him in the women's game. So I can understand that. Now, if you're a promoter, though, if you feel your promoter's got the back of someone else and you feel like you had a legitimate knockdown, which was not given, it didn't appear to me like she stepped on her foot, then you have the other fighter also, in your opinion, holding you too much. Well, then you're in a situation where you're saying, if I was the A side with the promoter backing, is she really going to get away with that? And that's when it starts to plant these little demons in your mind. Now, I'm not saying she's necessarily right. It doesn't mean that something untoward happened. It doesn't mean that Katie Taylor got the rub of the green. There are some referees that let things go more than others. Maybe that's all that we saw. But I can understand why she's sort of wound up about it and can't let it go. And the good thing is, if she sticks with Matchroom to make the third possible, you've got a really interesting trilogy fight. And like D-Style says, make it in the UK this time. That's the fairest possible outcome. So yeah, all in all, I agree with D-Style on this. I'm not suggesting there's anything untoward that occurred. I don't think it was necessarily going to change the outcome of the fight. I do think Katie was doing some brilliant stuff in there. And Chantelle was getting away with a few things on the inside as well, a few dirty little tricks as well. So I'm not saying you had one saint and one sinner in there, but I can see why she's upset.
Base, after seeing that masterclass that Katie put on against Chantelle, I mean, do you think Chantelle's not given her full credit for the victory?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, look, I understand certain parts of Chantelle's issue, but she had issues after the first fight that she won. And it's like, you went to Ireland in the first fight and you got a decision. So to have this sort of narrative or this mindset of, oh, like they're all out to get me, or I can't get a fair shake here, or look, she gets away with X, Y, Z, and even my promoter's against me. It's like, well, why wasn't he against you in the first? The first fight was more important than the second one, because this rematch wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be Amanda Serrano time. Like you basically held up the bag, so to speak. So he would have preferred for Katie to win the first fight. He had nothing to do with that because it was judged fairly, and it was sort of, perceived by the judges, the 2 out of the 3, that you won more than enough rounds to be awarded the victory. So when you then sort of get to the second one, then it's like Katie just made adjustments. She basically just stopped you from being able to do all the things that you've done in the first fight that worked for you. And then in your mind, it's like, oh, well, ref, but like, I was able to do this first time. Why can't I do it now? She must be, she must be cheating. And you're not doing anything about it. So in that mindset, okay, fine. But then when we get to the whole, oh, well, the ref didn't know what he was doing. He's a terrible ref. No one knows him. Such a high profile fight. It should be someone that we all know. Well, I've seen him before. I know who. I've seen him ref quite a few fights. So what's the problem? Is maybe you're not watching enough boxing if that's the case? Then okay, well, if Eddie's jumping up and down, Eddie, by the way, he said that he never jumped, he never celebrated. He was neutral the whole time. He doesn't like when he's got two fighters because he has to kind of stay impartial. But even if he did or make an impassioned speech, or he was happy that Katie got the win back, as Chris said, that's his number one female fighter, the first fighter we ever signed. She's the reason why there's a women's game as prevalent as it is right now, and she spearheaded that. And he's been on so many more different emotional roller coaster journeys with her than he has been with Chantelle. She joined the fold in 2019, I think. 2018, late 2018, 2019. Katie's been there since what, 2015, sorry. Like that's his darling, the same as AJ. It's like you're never gonna get top billing over AJ unless you was one of the OGs, like the Kel Brooks and Tony Bellews and that those type of people. So at some points you just kind of got to understand that. Now, with regards to the third fight, look, if it was in the UK, I'd say cool. But realistically, the chance you had to make it in the UK was the second fight. You're now back to being the B side. You're not going to get that concession. And unless if it's at the free arena again, or that's where they're sort of claiming it to be, then I can understand. No, put it at the OVO, because that's about 6,000 to 7,000 more seater, and you can probably get about 10,000 in there. And you can charge higher because prices in England are more than in obviously in Ireland, but with the euro to the pound. But if it's at somewhere like Croke Park and they actually get that Croke Park planning or whatever, you've got no chance, because there's no stadium in the UK that you're getting more money for that fight, and it's only going to come down to the money. And I just don't, Chantelle, she's going to have to acquiesce to that one. Like I said, the time for her to be the A side was the first fight. I mean, the second, this fight just went because she had more bargaining chips. She didn't accept it then, she can't expect to get the concessions now after she lost. And especially now after she's come out saying what she said. And Eddie has clearly been not happy about that in the interviews he's done with IFL and whatnot moving forward. So yeah, and when you look at the track record, even as I said, even if she has been given or he was more happy, he's done a fantastic job for Chantelle Cameron. There was no other promoter that was going to give her the kind of opportunities that Eddie gave her and stuff that he done for her. So a lot of it feels like sour grapes, feels like she's mad at the world. She wants a reason to be upset. Like I said, she was upset after the first fight. She made issues before the first fight with Ellie Scottney. So I just think she's got it in her locker to not be happy unless everything's on her terms. And she just upset that she just can't be the A side no matter what happens.
And to be fair, just to support base in that, the Ellie Scottney thing was pretty unprecedented, to be honest. And he did back her. So she has had a lot of backing from Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, it's true. Lee, do you have a problem with the officiating in this fight? What are your thoughts?
The officiating? Well, before I go there, I am in sympathy with Chantelle Cameron on a couple of issues. One, I thought that in the first fight she decisively beat Katie Taylor. 7 rounds to 3, maybe even 8 rounds to 2. She won pretty handily, and I felt that should have been the end of that, because it seemed pretty clear to me. The cynical side of me thought, okay, the fight's in Dublin. This is Katie Taylor's homecoming. The preferred outcome would have been what happened in the second fight. Katie Taylor would win. She would become a double undisputed champion. Glory, glory, hallelujah. But it didn't turn out that way. The judges did. Cameron dominated the fight, but she barely won on the scorecard. She escaped. And the fact that they put together an immediate rematch again in Dublin, it was almost like, okay, she got away with it once. Let's see if she can do it again. And Katie Taylor did fight better in the rematch. She did make adjustments. I scored at 95-95, but no more than that. And the powers that be got the result that they wanted. Katie Taylor is now double champion. And now she is in the position to demand terms for the third fight. And if it's at Croke Park, she's got no chance. So I could see where Chantelle Cameron feels a bit angry about how things played out. Because under normal circumstances against another fighter, the first fight's result should have been it. But it wasn't, and we saw what happened. As far as the refereeing is concerned, she had a right to be displeased with the knockdown not being called. But as far as her charge that the referee was inexperienced, it doesn't hold water. In fact, I did a little research into Ramirez's record. And according to BoxRec, he's been a referee for 20 years. And he's had 35 world title fights, and many of them involving women's title fights. In fact, the first women's title fight was in 2011, 12 years ago. And it involved Ana Maria Torres, who was just voted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. He's also worked world title fights involving Amanda Serrano and her sister Cindy, Yocasta Valle, Marilyn Rivas, Jackie Nava, and Jessica Bob. So he's not inexperienced when it comes to handling women's world title fights. And here's a bit of trivia. Ramirez was also the third man when Deontay Wilder knocked out his future trainer, Malik Scott, in the first round. So her argument that he was inexperienced, I don't think holds water. And I just hope that Chantelle Cameron was paid well for this whole scenario, because she went to Ireland once. She got a decision narrower than what I saw in the ring. She accepted a rematch back in Dublin, knowing what could happen, and it happened. And now she's in a position where, the fair thing would have been for the defending champion in the second fight to say, hey, it's got to be on my home turf. I won the first fight on her home turf. She lost. Now she's got to come to me. It didn't turn out that way. So now that Katie has won the rematch, Katie gets to dictate terms. And if it's got to be at Croke Park, and if Chantelle Cameron is the challenger, she knows that she's got to win 10 out of 10 rounds, score 3 knockdowns, maybe to get a draw. That's what she's going to walk into.
Lee, sorry, let me just, I just want to say one thing. With regards to the first fight, Chantelle did win, but it's not as wide as you think it was. It wasn't a complete one-sided fight. And then also, with regards to the whole rematch thing, remember, Chantelle signed the rematch clause before the first fight. It's not like she was forced into it. She willingly signed that to get the fight in the first place.
But
and
she knew the
terms before. She knew the terms beforehand. So
what was the second fight agreed to be in Dublin, though?
Yeah, it was always gonna be back there, supposedly, possibly in the stadium. But what she could have done is she could have maybe had look, if I'll agree to a rematch, but we need to address where it's going to be. But she had signed the terms. A lot of it was already pre-agreed, the splits and all that sort of stuff. So it's not like she was accosted into it.
But base, that just means she couldn't flex her muscles and try to be the A side because it was all contracted.
Oh no, she could have had it adjusted before she signed.
A trilogy isn't contracted though.
The trilogy's not.
It's not. So I think.
But for her to try and flex now with absolutely nothing to bargain with is not going to happen. Is my point. But it's a lot. She could have, before the first fight, she could have asked for some concessions in the rematch, either more money on the second fight, or she gets to pick the venue or something like that. But she didn't. She just signed it all and then complained when she had to go back. That's what.
I think it was like the Kambosos Haney thing, whereby regardless of what happened in the first fight, the second fight was going to be in Australia. So even though the first fight was one-sided, I think they'd already agreed prior to that.
Yeah, that's different. But was it specifically in the contract that the rematch with Taylor and Cameron had to be in Dublin? And did she accept that term?
I know they were
specific, then that's a different thing.
I think that was in the contract that it would that these are the terms. This is the time. This is the stipulation. These are the splits.
Not sure.
I can find out. What I'll do is I'll find out for you, and I'll let you know because I've got the right people to talk to.
Give Cameron her fight in the UK. Sure. She fought Serrano in New York. She could fight Cameron in the UK.
What do you make of all this talk, Crystal? A lot of information.
I have to say, the first thing I do is a little bit of research on the referee, right? Because all of these allegations, to me, they are just allegations, right? This official, just as Lee stated, he is not new to the game. He have 20 years. He have title fights. He doing just fine, right? Do she not appreciate it? You know, every fight, they always find something the referee do or don't do that they want to spark at, right? This is part of it. It's been part of it for years. And I think over the years, our referees actually have gotten better. I know it's hard to believe, but there are more standardized meetings, testings, all of this. So I think they are improving. Is there some room for improvement? Absolutely there is. And I truly feel very aligned with Mr. Lee Grooves. I don't know that the referee actually is the problem here. I think it's the politics surrounding the two fights. And I truly feel that this is the problem that Ms. Cameron have. And it is unfortunate, but in a world that we live in today, this is that fair factor. Don't play in boxing. There's nothing fair in boxing, right? So she can complain all she wants, but do it change anything? We'll see in the trilogy. I don't think it do.
All right, everybody, that's it. We had a long one tonight, man. This one was a big show. I think we broke the record here for the longest show. But I want to thank everyone, especially you guys in the UK that stayed up late to join us and watched us in the chat. We really appreciate that. And we're going to have a great weekend of fights. And until next week, see y'all.
Peace.
Take care. God bless.